Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and this is going to be the next in my J.G. Ballard series, number 36, a story titled The Reptile Enclosure. Now, the original title of The Reptile Enclosure was The Sherrington Theory, and it was a short story published in March of 1963 in Amazing Science Fiction. I, of course, am reading it in this great, complete short stories of J.G. Ballard. And in here it's titled The Reptile Enclosure, which is, that book's not in print currently, but there's a lot of copies on the used book sources. Go out on the internet, you'll find a copy in really nice condition for not a huge amount of money. It's well worth it if you like J.G. Ballard's fiction. And I think J.G. Ballard is one of the very, very best ever. And that, well, this is quite the story. In it, you have Mr. Pelham and his wife Mildred, and they're just relaxing on the beach. Sunny summer day. They're relaxing on the beach, and there's radio people around them relaxing, and they're listening to the radio. Specifically, people are mostly listening to a radio broadcast of a launch of a satellite that's going to go up into orbit, and it's going to complete a communications network around the Earth. 1963, remember. So they're listening to this, and you know, the launch takes place. The rocket goes up, the satellite goes into orbit, and Mr. Pelham is noting that in 15 minutes it'll be over their position. It'll be overhead. They won't be able to see it, of course, because it's up in space. It's a bright sky. The sun's going to make it so you couldn't possibly spot it. You might be able to see it moving as a star across the sky at nighttime, but this is nighttime. It's the middle of the day. So they aren't able to see it, but it's going to be passing directly over there, overhead. And something strange starts to happen. Now, the way Ballard is writing this story, you just get this sense from the way he's wordsmithing, just his descriptions of the details and the descriptions of the people and the descriptions of the place, and you just get this sense. There isn't any action that you can pin it on and say that that's why you get this feeling. It's the way Ballard is writing this, that this very ordinary scene takes on this feeling of intense menace. This is like a horror story when you're reading it. It's really creepy. Brilliant writing, okay? This is why I keep doing these Ballard videos, because you're not going to read anything like this by Asimov or Heinlein or even Clark. Only Ballard is right. Even Bradbury, who's a great wordsmith, Ballard's the only one writing at this level in 1963. Okay, brilliant writer. He really brought so much great things to the genre, to literature in general, but to the science fiction genre and specifically. You know, and especially appearing in amazing stories alongside Edmund Hamilton, you know, world record Hamilton. His stories were just so far above the other stuff that it was appearing with. It's pretty amazing. And so even if the story ended there with, okay, creepy beach scene, satellite passes overhead, end of story, it would still be brilliant. But it doesn't, because people start acting strange. They start going and lining up along the water's edge on the end of the beach. And Mr. Pelham notices this, and he's going, well, what the heck is going on? Why are these people acting that way? And more people start to join them. And they're all just lining up along the edge of the water and looking at the water. I'm going to give you a spoiler here, just warning you, but I think I can do this because you really got to read this. I'm not doing it anywhere near any kind of justice. The story ends when the people start walking into the water as a bunch. And it's left to you, the reader, to think about what could be happening, what could be driving these people, what the heck is going on here. It's a very surreal story. I think it's, the other things I've read at this point in Ballard's career, late 62, early 1963, things like The Drowned World, he seems very focused on inner space, the inner mind, and psychology, and particularly the psychology of how we're interacting with the technological world, and how the technological world seems to be pushing us back towards a primitivism and pushing our minds back towards something he's I don't know if he really believed this or if he was just using this as a fictional device to write a damn good story, but his stories constantly have this theme of this racial memory going all the way back to the dinosaurs and reverting backwards in the stories as the modern world destroys our humanity. And that seems to be what he's getting at here. Even though he doesn't spell it out explicitly, it's hinted here that what's going on is these people are reverting and going back to the sea where we came from. I can't do this story justice. This is I'm not going to give it a top tail. Because as great, as wonderful as this story is, I feel it could have gone a little further. I feel that he could have made this a little more impactful. But not much, because he really does a lot here. It really is a brilliant story. It's just, for whatever reason, it didn't blow my mind. Not completely. His writing style blew my mind, but the story and idea itself, it's like I say, it's like, here we go again with this, racial memory going back to the dinosaurs. An interesting quote coming from the story that I think is very relevant to what he's trying to say here. Homo sapiens en masse, talking about all the people laying on the beach, Homo sapiens en masse presented a more unsavory spectacle than almost any other species of animal. And I think that's what he's getting at here. Very cool. This is very recommended, even if I'm not going to award it a top tail. Part of that's just because I've got so many Ballard stories in the top tails list. I want to try and hold back a little bit, and I want to start being a little bit pickier about top tails. So I'm not going to give this one a top tail rating, but it's so close, and I really recommend it to any of you that love reading to get a hold of the Reptile Enclosure and read it. It's great. I can't say enough about how terrific a writer Ballard is. So that's the Reptile Enclosure. If you've read the story, please leave your comments in the comments section and tell us what you think about the Reptile Enclosure. Otherwise, my next Ballard, number 37, is the Time Tombs. I hope you'll come back and join me for that and all the other Ballard that I'm doing, and all the other videos of different authors and different stories we do here on Telltale Books. And until then, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us a little love here, and keep our numbers growing. And tell your friends about this. Tell your friends to come and watch this channel, because I think what we're doing here is really good. I think what we're doing here is different from what any of the other booktube channels are doing. Even when they do cover some of the same stories I'm talking about, I watch their videos and I like their videos. There's some other people are doing some good things, but they're just not doing what I'm doing here. They're not quite they're not quite catching it, and that's fine because I am. Okay. You know, and I'm giving you this perspective of how these stories are fitting one after another. It's almost, you know, and that was my thought. What if I was alive way back when Ballard sold his first story and I read that first story, and then I was able to find his second story and his third story, and I read each of them in turn as they were published in order of him publishing them. What if I had encountered Ballard like that? And I didn't know anything about J.G. Ballard when I read that first story. And then when I read the second story, I knew the first story, but I didn't know any of all the stuff that was to come after that. That's what I'm trying to do, is read these stories with those eyes and show you how these authors progress through their work. And we've seen some really cool things happening with Ballard. We've seen, you know, he was a strong writer to begin with, but man, did he really progress, especially now in the early 1960s. We're seeing his style really blossom into something terrific. And we're also, I think, at this point, we're seeing him starting to go in a new direction. Like I say, at this time, he's starting to be concerned with what he called inner space, which has become a standard term since then. But I believe he was the first one to use that term and start talking about wanting to focus on that instead of outer space in his science fiction, to look into our minds instead of out to the universe. And he's doing a brilliant job with these so far. So come on back for the next video.